Hi, I'm Dominic Delli Carpini. I work at York College of Pennsylvania. Yes, when I first came to York College of Pennsylvania, I was hired as their director of composition. So the role was to lead the first year writing program. But at that point, it was taught largely by adjunct faculty. About 90% of the courses were taught by adjunct faculty. There was very little full-time involvement in the program. Only a few English teachers who were required to teach within the program. So it's a pretty common, I think, situation faced by many WPAs in trying to get visibility and credibility for the program. As I thought about the problems that were involved in moving from where we were to where I wanted to be, I tried to think about this as a long-term solution, knowing that nothing could be solved quickly. So there were several issues that I knew we faced. One was getting visibility and credibility for the program, and I knew that would be difficult because no one in the department or at the college that actually even knew anything about 4Cs, knew nothing about WPA, knew nothing about the various organizations or the discipline itself. It was seen largely as a service, and largely the adjunct faculty saw the work they did as piecework. They would come in, they teach their classes, do the best job they could, but continually teach the courses the same way they wanted to. So knowing that, I faced several problems. One was, how would I fund or make the argument for more full-time positions in writing, since the college did not really value that yet. Secondly, I knew that I had to work with this adjunct faculty. We were not going to go from 90% adjunct faculty to even 50% full-time faculty overnight. So I knew the adjunct faculty had to be some of the advocates and some of the players in this shift from one version of teaching writing to another. And thirdly, I had to think a little bit about if I was going to hire full-time faculty, how was I going to hire full-time faculty that were experts in the field, understood the discipline, without saying to them, you're going to teach first-year writing and only first-year writing for the entire career you spend here. They needed to have the ability to advance in their careers, to publish in their field if they were going to be tenure track. So the solution that we came up with was to try and to develop a professional writing major. This was designed not only for the major's sake itself, but actually to help our first-year writing program. And working with the dean at the time, I tried to argue for this writing major, saying that in fact it would fit the mission of our college. That was key, and so I'm going to be speaking about what we did at York College, but I think every college needs to think about what its own mission values in order to do this well on the local level. Our brand at the college was professionalism. We are a college that, although not vocational, certainly focuses on careers. So developing a professional writing major fit right in with the idea that we were a school that valued professionalism. So that was the first step, was to say we can develop a major that fits in with the ethos of the college. Secondly, to hire a first colleague in writing who really could focus on writing with me, so I couldn't do this alone. And I was fortunate enough to successfully argue for one tenure line. And at that point I was joined by my colleague Mike Zerby about 2 years into this process, who then helped me develop the writing major further. Once that began, the next step was, how do we attract students to this major? Because growing the major would mean getting more faculty lines. And as we went through this process, we knew that we had to make the argument that in fact this led to careers and to jobs. That was, again, the ethos of the college. And so by developing internships, etc., that was our next issue. We said, all right, next step is to make sure these students are out there as interns, that they are able to find jobs. And for the next 2 or 3 years, we really focused on making sure that the students that we worked with in our writing major would then get productive work. Once that began happening and the major grew relatively quickly, we got up to 50 or 60 majors within a few years, peaked out at about 100 majors in a school of about 4,300 students. So it was a significantly sized major. Then I could start making arguments for more tenure lines and also for developing faculty development. And we started to work then with our adjunct faculty as well. Started bringing them to 4Cs. They first came a couple of times. We gathered some funding for adjunct faculty. They came to 4Cs a few times, then in fact started presenting at 4Cs. So we were also professionalizing that staff, as we were also hiring adjunct faculty who were willing to do the faculty development. One by one, we now have 8 full-time Ret Comp faculty at the college. This took about 15 years, so it was a long process. But in developing this, the major is strong. The first-year writing program is able to actually focus on the discipline. And then the last thing we had to do, and this was the last thing, was not to go out right away and say, well, writing is a discipline and therefore we deserve respect, but actually to gain that respect nationally first. So as more and more of our faculty came to the college and more of them were publishing and presenting in the field, then we were able to go to the next dean we worked with and say, look, we are a serious discipline. We, in fact, are developing a program with some national attention. And by doing that, we were able to then also work with these faculty to develop our first-year writing program further. That was the original aim, was the first-year writing program, but it actually came, as we found, through a major, through a professional writing major. It was the long way around the barn in some ways, but it was the only way that we thought, within the context we faced, that we would be able to do this, because we were a majors-centered, not a general education-centered institution. It has changed the institution, frankly. Our writing program has developed into the driving force behind general education reform. We do have a large rhetoric and composition faculty now who teach seriously both in first-year writing and in professional writing. And we have developed a program, I think, that after many, many years has gotten some recognition beyond the college itself, and certainly within the program, within the college itself.